Okay, so the first institutions that I want to talk about are local authorities, and we have talked in brief before about the fact that I worked within system failure in local authorities, so they're quite close to my heart. But we've also talked about what local authorities are. So they are largely a collection of tensions. This is the rule of law that Hayek was discussing. This is where the systems that mean we obey no man over the law have emerged. Our abuse services, our child protection services, services that uphold legal responsibilities to very vulnerable groups, people with learning disabilities, older people. This is where there's a huge collection. Now, it's all very well looking for someone to blame over local authorities, but actually they still function. And in fact, the systems that are partially housed here are still functioning. Even after 8 years of austerity, even after 30 years of erosion, even after really difficult times, they're still functioning. Just. The climate's no good. It's pretty horrific working in a local authority right now. They're running on empty. People, these are cultures of blame. And when I was working in local authorities, I have never seen institutional breakdown like that. Now, I would urge you to go and read the Climbié inquiry if you can stomach it, and read the description of the administrative systems within that inquiry. It's a lot worse now. So in the time that I was there, they imposed a computer system which put kids at risk because it tried to wedge social work assessment into a computer system with tick boxes. At one point, I got sent out to a situation where I ended up sat in a room with a guy in the middle of a cocaine psychosis with a 15-year-old girl and an 11-year-old girl because I hadn't been able to access the information that I needed to know that he was fucking dangerous. And had I been able to access the information to know, I wouldn't have walked into that on my own, This was liquid logic. This was about the time there was a death in Bradford that I think was more than a little bit linked to that made the papers. They have been crushed. But what's important to understand about local authorities is, yes, they have been crushed. Yes, they have been subject to outsourcing, to all these new institutional experimentations. Yes, the role of social workers has been reduced to case manager and purchaser of services. But these systems are still largely functioning. They really are. And in fact, it was a High Court judge who issued a warning about mermaids, and that was issued as a warning to all professionals to apply critical thinking to claims that are being made by charities. So there's a lot of systems within local authorities that are essential that we didn't actually know when we established local authorities. We didn't know these would happen. We didn't know that child protection would evolve into what it has. We didn't know that it would become something that needed to be understood at a national level. We thought that this could be contained here within local authorities. We didn't understand that the nature of child protection is that it needed professionals able to challenge power, and that can't just be political responsibility taken at local authority level. And through the child abuse inquiry and lots of other things, that learning now has to come to a national level. And what the trans rights debacle has shown is that understanding of safeguarding, which binds everybody at the bottom, now has to come up the top. So that's already more or less happened. And in fact, what the trans rights thing has done is you could not have got across to policymakers the patterns of male violence and abuse and the relentlessness of it without an active demonstration that caused a reconstruction in their understanding of power. Well, trans rights activists have just done that. So that's why I was so pleased with what they've done. They've requested a safeguarding debate. They've demanded we look at intersectionality. They've demonstrated intersectionality. They've demonstrated male pattern abuse. And now people will start listening to those activists, and it will come in like a magic eye picture. And that's how this works. You look around and all of a sudden the landscape has changed. So there are lots of duties like this at local authorities. So social care evolved within local authorities, and then because it was invisible, both parties agreed that we could kind of kick fuck out of it, and that's largely because our economics couldn't accommodate it. We've now dissolved our social care system, but just at a point where these crises are generating. But we actually now need to make care a component of our economic thinking. So that actually had to happen. And this couldn't have happened until local authorities started to fail. I'm sorry to say, I know this is going to injure lots of people who want me to mean well. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. We had to wait. These institutions have developed by increment as duties within a local authority. And actually, while this is terrible that local authorities have been battered, yes, it is terrible that there's been this tension in our current belief system. Yes, we are seeing the tension between the belief system shaping the systems collapsing and the forces that shaped them being revealed. But only crisis would ever have done that. And the fact is that crises do it rather efficiently, but we generally don't notice it's happening. So by the time the trans rights thing's up, women will have organically, all over the country, probably not discussing austerity, by the way. I wish everybody would, but that's just not going to happen. You know? But by the time this crisis is done, there will be an awareness of these systems at political level. Women will have asserted themselves as a political force. We will have bypassed the left, which makes them superfluous. They have undone the parasitic dynamic they enjoyed anyway. And while crises are uncomfortable, there are very few things that we do more efficiently than crisis. And had we had this post-Keynesian understanding, had we retained this post-Keynesian, we would have understood that this process was going to come. Now, in my next video, I'm going to talk about the particular emergence of a couple of aspects of local authorities, and in fact, no, just one aspect. I'm going to talk about looked after children, and I know I'm always talking about looked after children, but as I'm the only fucking person who ever is, I think that's justified. And I'm going to talk about what they mean as the new bottom line for policy, and what the implications of the evolution of this evolution in citizenship of looked after children for the relationship between local authorities and centrally planned institutions and government. And I actually want to talk about why it is that looked after children, it's around this area that actually we should be looking very, very seriously. Now, the Social Market Foundation have just issued a piece of research which indicates there's a silent crisis. There is not a silent crisis in these systems. Our child protection system has not been functioning quite openly for a great many years. And the people who tried to talk about it got treated the way that I did. So, and largely at the centre of this crisis is women whose labour is so reliable that we don't notice crisis because they will just keep on going. So the next video will look at the looked after child and the implications of it for policy making, because they're quite fucking significant.